Welcome to today's Explainer. We are stepping into a world that is literally crumbling around us, a reality completely covered in falling ash, to explore a truly fascinating and honestly pretty brutal narrative known as the Violet Paradox. We're going to dive deep into a grim, dark, gothic fable that deals with the existential decay of our world and the terrifying yet totally beautiful freedom that follows absolute destruction. If you've ever felt like the structures around us are just decaying, well, this story takes that exact feeling to its absolute Nietzschean extreme. Let's get into it.
You pathetic dreamers clinging to the wreckage of a world that was already dead long before the ash fell. Man, that hits hard, doesn't it? The source material here pulls absolutely zero punches. It confronts us, all of us, about the total illusion of our societal structures. In this fable, we're basically huddled in the shadows of crumbling spires, weeping over things made of dust. The text challenges this incredibly human tendency to hold on to a dying reality. It's like clinging to a corpse that's refusing to rot, acting as if it's the only possible way to live.
So, to figure out how we actually get from that total wreckage to true freedom, we're going to track what's called the cosmic cycle. It's a journey through 4 distinct eras. We start with Era 1, the overripe fruit, representing decay. Then we move into Era 2, the Starfinder's fire, which is total destruction. That brings us to Era 3, the great silence of nihilism. And finally, Era 4, the violet's bloom, which is pure existentialism.
All right, kicking things off with Chapter 1, The Rotting Moral Order. Our fable begins in a reality bound by the silk of totally useless laws and the parables of blind weavers. It's a world suffering from deep, systemic, existential rot. The text illustrates this so brilliantly, describing it as having skin tight with rot and sweetness that is fermented into vinegar. That visceral, almost unsettling metaphor of the overripe fruit, it perfectly captures a failing moral and social order. The sweetness, which represents the original purpose or value of society, has soured. It's become toxic. The old world isn't just old anymore. It's inherently corrupt, and its structures are actively suffocating the life out of anyone trapped inside it.
And within all this decay, we find the concept of golden cages. These are human institutions, think titles, financial debts, inherited laws that have devolved into restrictive prisons. They've crumbled like parched lilies, and yet the survivors mistakenly treat them as the unbreakable foundation of the universe. I actually want you to think about that for a second. What are your own golden cages? What imaginary, socially constructed rules do you treat as unbending laws of physics, keeping you locked in the state of existential rot?
Which leads us perfectly into Chapter 2, The Starfinder's Destructive Mercy.
So the text calls the arrival of the Starfinder a haunting paradox of mercy. People are whining about the destruction of their corrupt reality as if a massive crime has been committed. But the Starfinder? He's just acting as a gardener. And you know, a gardener must sometimes burn the weeds to clear the soil of its toxic illusions. The earth literally has to exhale its lethal breath to turn a suffocating society into the only honest thing you've ever owned. Absolute destruction, at least in this Gothic framework, is paradoxically framed as an act of profound care. It's a merciful intervention to cure terminal stagnation.
Now for the aftermath. Chapter 3, The Void of Cosmic Indifference.
This era is the total embodiment of cosmic nihilism. Because to the Starfinder, our entire history, all our grand achievements, all our deepest sorrows, they're just minor, repetitive cycles to an indifferent universe. Once he clears the void, he just turns toward the next dying constellation. He leaves the survivors entirely alone. There's no master left to appease, no code to blindly follow, and absolutely no sky that cares. But actually, we need to critique this cosmic coldness for a moment. Because in his relentless pursuit of a clean void, the Starfinder's cycle is utterly devoid of empathy. It really becomes its own kind of tyrannical erasure. It's a staggering, crushing realization of our own cosmic insignificance.
But here is where we hit a massive philosophical pivot. On one side of the coin, you have active nihilism, the great silence, the field of black ash, the truly painful erasure of all those imaginary values and golden cages we clung to. But on the exact opposite side, that very same destruction is what creates existential liberation. It gives us a totally blank slate for authentic self-definition, rooted in the idea that existence precedes essence. You literally cannot have the liberation without the ash. The terrifying destruction of the old world is the mandatory gateway.
And that brings a spark of hope in Chapter 4, The Violet Paradox of Rebirth.
Let's break down exactly why this specific flower is so crucial to the fable. Mythologically, the violet is linked to Persephone and the underworld, so it represents the darkness and finality of the Starfinder's great silence. But it's also a paradox of hope.
It's one of the very first flowers to brave the frost of spring. In fact, in the real world, many species of violets are pioneer plants. They are biologically wired to be the very first things to grow in heavily disturbed or burned soil. How cool is that? Philosophically, this represents our existential struggle. Just as the violet needs the dark underworld to prompt its bloom, humanity has to use the ruins of their world to transition into radical autonomy. True value was never going to be found in the Old Kingdom. It had to be grown in the ash.
Finally, we reach our conclusion. Chapter 5, Terrifying Freedom to Begin.
The sources define this state as radical autonomy. When the cosmic reset turns the whole world to ash, it completely strips you of every single excuse you ever had. You can't blame the king, you can't blame your debts, and you certainly can't blame inherited laws because they are just gone. You are now absolutely 100% responsible for your own life on a blank slate. And wow, that is a heavy, crushing weight, realizing that without those golden cages, we are now entirely condemned to be free.
Only on this blank slate of ash can you finally be the absolute authors of your own meaning. This right here, this is the core Nietzschean heartbeat of the entire fable. Because existence precedes essence, because you exist first in a universe with absolutely no built-in meaning, you have to write the story yourself. You have to endure the great silence, brave the frost, just like the violet, and completely embrace the staggering responsibility of choosing your own inherent value.
So I want to leave you with this thought today. We spend so much of our lives maintaining our rotting, overripe realities simply because we are terrified of the silence that comes if they fall. But what if we embrace the paradox of mercy? What if we accept the reset? Now that the golden cages are ash, what meaning will you author? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this leaves you hungry to explore these incredible concepts even further. Keep questioning everything, and I'll see you next time.